Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to do a little bit of speculation. You see, I've been thinking a lot about the Southern Realms, also known as the Dogs of War. This would be the territories of Estalia, Tilea and Araby. People seem to forget that Araby is also part of the Dogs of War. These are factions that we're all kind of wanting in the future as, well, you know, it's just some cool extra filler factions, some extra types of gameplay, some extra playstyles, and more importantly, getting rid of the Empire clones, which, let's be honest, is kind of frustrating. If we look at the Immortal Empires map, we can see Empire clones in the Border Princes in Estalia and Tilea, and factions that really have no place being there sometimes. There's also Araby, which right now is just full of Bretonnians, and also Tomb Kings, which kind of makes sense with the Tomb Kings because that area has always been contested by them. But there's a lot of dead space, essentially, that could be used for mini race packs. I've talked about this in the past. 1 or 2 legendary lords, and that's it. Well, with a faction attached to it. If we can be perfectly honest, factions such as Norsca and even the Ogre Kingdoms are pretty much mini race packs. Mostly because the grand majority of their roster will reuse rigging and stuff, so they'll just need to basically change around some assets, reskin essentially for a lot of the units. And a lot of animations will either get reused or taken from other places. Not so much for the Ogres, because the Ogres were a truly unique race, but you can see what I mean, right? They're not even full armies, yet they are still relatively playable. There's a bit of an issue with Greasus, but other than that, the Ogres are perfectly fine, at least in my opinion, since recent updates. But yeah, those DLCs were actually cheaper than most race packs, and yeah, not as full, but enough to have something to play with. Now, like I've said, we've talked about this a lot, and we've gone into a lot of specifics, but it looks like this actually might be a possibility now. You see, the problem that these human nations had is that they weren't really fleshed out a lot. It was very similar to the case of maybe Grand Cafe, if anything. They've been around the lore a lot, and yes, they've had some units introduced and taken away. Obviously, additions have changed, and plans that Games Workshop did clearly have for these factions to eventually become a playable thing got taken away. But in most cases, if you look at the lore of Estalia, Tilea, or Araby, yeah, they were unique, but there was so little about them. Some crossover used to happen, like for example with Tilea and Estalia. The reason why they were used as Empire clones most likely is because, oh yeah, they're kind of similar, when really they weren't. And it seems that in most recent years, we've seen a lot of updates coming to Tilea, Estalia, even Araby. This is mostly in the form of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, yet it's distinguishing them, it's giving them different faiths, it's pushing them into a different direction. We know that in Estalia there's a heavy focus on Myrmidia, and there's even Battle Priests. Those can be found in the Old World too, but the heavy concentration is in Estalia. And while the Tileans also worship Myrmidia, there's churches to her too there, there's a bit of a heavy focus within the Gods of Lore. This is something new that's just come out in lore. Through Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, we've already seen that there is a new push for Araby too, where we're seeing that Araby is a lot more active. Yes, it's not a lot, but it's showing that Araby still stands as a nation. Keep in mind, in some pieces of lore, Araby was fully destroyed, but now it seems it's more of a quest of liberation when it came to the Crusades. So this is showing that Araby still stands. The fact is that these lore changes would have to come into effect if they've got a greater plan, right? It's not just going to be for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, as this would affect lore for the tabletop too. This is going to affect a lot of different things, especially since Old World is not going to be based in the 8th edition setting. However, the Crusades would have already happened by the time of Old World, depending on what part of the setting we actually join into. It's a bit of a grey area right now because Games Workshop like to keep as quiet as possible. But again, seeing as we've already seen some heraldry for what looks to be Estalian, Tilean, and Arabian in a Old World update, which is just annoying. This is something that Games Workshop do again, where they'll pretty much hand you a hint, but they won't say what it is. However, it is very much looking to be what we're expecting. If they're coming into Old World, it's likely that they could also be made into DLC too, as that means that the cross-promotion is there and it's going to be easy enough to sell miniatures. The fact that this is a gradual thing, we've been getting updates ever so often. Keep in mind that Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay again is mostly focused within the lands of the Empire, yet here we are getting updates every now and then on Estalia, Tilea, Araby. It leads me to question that more is actually happening in the background, which obviously does make sense, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is canon, Tilea, Estalia, Araby, those factions wouldn't be as important as, say, for example, Cathay or Kislev were in the development of Total War Warhammer 3, as they were main factions, so they had to go all in. But if Games Workshop can tell the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay guys, okay, go through these, revise and update the lore, and then we'll see what happens. I mean, we're all expecting Dogs of War, right? But what if Dogs of War don't actually happen, and instead of Dogs of War, we get this? No, I'm not saying a Southern Realms DLC, because the more I think about it, a Southern Realms DLC wouldn't be doing it justice. It would be a DLC with all the different areas, but we wouldn't really have full rosters. This is something that could sell more. Again, mini race packs for Total War, as race packs are the ones that sell the most. This wouldn't be the same size as the others, but would be the same size as Norsca and the Ogre Kingdoms. They wouldn't take the most priority here, so obviously after this would be, the Chorfs. We're expecting them next year. Then after that would be either Ind or Koresh. But eventually, whilst we're still waiting, and Lord packs might be coming a little bit stale, well, there's a surprise Estalia, there's a surprise Tilea, there's a surprise Araby, a DLC which is focused on Immortal Empires only, which, has been a hot topic lately because, it should be base game, and if it counts as a base game, there's the excuse. There's literally the excuse. A DLC which is only available for Immortal Empires, which would make things easier on CA. Let's be honest, no map expansions would be needed when it comes to Realm of Chaos, because the focus could be taken away. If nobody wants Realm of Chaos and wants Immortal Empires, and that's turned into a bit of a base game, well, that means DLCs that we've been waiting for, stuff that might have only made sense in Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2 because of everything, how the map is done, what's the actual base game map, and so on, well, that's gone now. Hell, I'm just jumping in with a quick edit now, so the video is going to come out even later than usual. Creative Assembly have just talked about the possibility about making a base game thing. So this could actually be very, very good for us. If this happens, this just kind of solidifies the idea more. This honestly could really give us what we want and more DLC. Obviously, we'll have to talk about that later on, as I need to digest this. There's something weird about the whole implications of the change, like time, risks, resources, like... what risk do you have if you just make it base game? There's already a thing in place where you can't really play anything if you don't own it, so yeah. But anyways, we'll discuss that another time. I'm honestly saying that I am feeling very, very confident about mini race pack DLCs, and it's looking more likely now. This is literally because we're getting more and more and more major lore dumps from Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, which is specifically pointing out Tilea, Estalia, and Araby. I'm telling you, it's something that I'm feeling that it's going to be a really big thing. Keep in mind, it's the same thing with Cathay, right? They started posting Cathay pictures, and it was like, oh yeah, by the way, they're also coming to Warhammer the Old World. Same thing with Kislev. This just seems way too much of a coincidence to pass it by. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. I want to see what you guys think. Apologies for the late post. I've had some IRL stuff to sort out. It's been kind of stressful. Until then, I'll see you all again very, very soon, and have a good day.